Unfortunately, the guy we're focusing on this week is not a prime number. He wears number 25, but he certainly was a primetime player last week, and that's LeSean McCoy on Sunday night. What a hell of a game he had. 30 rushes for 185 yards, 6.2 yards a carry. He scored 2 touchdowns. He only had 2 catches for 15 yards, but that brought him up to 200 yards total for the game against the Cowboys. For the season, he's had 754 rushing yards, 5.6 yards an attempt. He's had 138 receiving yards on 23 receptions. He's got 10 total touchdowns. He's in the debate for the best back in the league right now. And now you add in the factor, Kerry, and I want to get into some other numbers that you have, that he's got Michael Vick, another great rusher in the backfield with him. Yep. Certainly paints a picture about the Eagles, doesn't it?
No, it absolutely does, and I'm glad you picked it. This is why, great minds think alike, Butch, and so do ours, You pointed out LeSean McCoy as a discussion topic before we came out this morning Tuesday morning with our rusher rating for Week 8. This is compiled by a guy named Ken Crippen, who's the executive director of the Pro Football Researchers Association. He calculates rusher rating for us, just kind of a formula for passer rating to measure the most effective ball carriers in football. LeSean McCoy, number 1 in the NFL right now, guys, through Week 8, 135.4 rusher rating. He has an incredible 5.6 yard per attempt average, 8 touchdowns, no fumbles. He's 1 spot ahead of Adrian Peterson in rusher rating. And he had a great game this week, too.
Now, what does that 135.4 number mean for rusher rating?
What it means, it's calculated just like passer rating. So anything over 100 is good. 158 is, proverbial. It's a proverbial perfect game. It's a bit of an archaic number, but it's something football fans understand because passer rating has been in effect for so long. And we just try to find a way, how high of an average per attempt you have? We have average per attempt.
Are fumbles factored in?
Fumbles are factored in, yeah. And so one key for McCoy is he has 0 fumbles this year. So you put together his 5.6 yards per attempt, his 8 touchdowns on just 135 carries, 0 fumbles. That's a very good, very efficient, effective performance. And he's, like I said, number 1 NFL-wide this year in rusher rating, right ahead of Adrian Peterson. And he was number 2 in Week 2 with that performance against Dallas. Steven Jackson, in the big upset for the Rams over the Saints, actually was number 1 this week in particular. But McCoy having a spectacular season. And to bring it back to the Vick factor, Michael Vick adds so much to the rushing quality of any team he's on. In fact, the 2010 Eagles, Butch, were number 5 in the Super Bowl era in average per rush attempt. They averaged something like, I don't know the number off the top of my head, like 5.6, 5.7 yards per attempt on the ground, which is a historically great number for an average per attempt.
Let's look at those numbers for this year, Kerry, and they're even better. The rushing yards per attempt for the Eagles are first in the NFL at 5.8 right now. Their rushing yards per game are 180. They're like 4th or 5th in rushing attempts. But again, rushing yards per attempt, they're number 1 by far at 5.8. And their offensive hog index for you guys is 4th best in the league. They're right up there with that offensive line. And remember all the problems they said they had with the offensive line. They're pounding the football. Yep. We all know that Michael Vick's going to have to stand there in the pocket and throw the football if they're going to win a championship, especially if they're going to beat Green Bay. But they can pound the football better than anybody.
Yeah, well, and one thing, though, and McCoy's had a great season, like we said, number 1 in the NFL, according to our numbers, the number 1 running back in the NFL. But one thing that makes it a little unfair in favor of Vick teams is in the NFL, when a quarterback crosses the line of scrimmage, that becomes a rushing attempt. It counts as his rushing yards, whereas a sack counts against his passing yards. So, like in college, if a quarterback it will count against his rushing yards. So, anytime a quarterback gets over that line of scrimmage, let's put it this way, negative yards do not count against a quarterback's average. So that's why, the best seasons in history by a runner are like Michael Vick and Randall Cunningham and guys like that in average per attempt, because those negative yards, which count against a running back, do not count against a quarterback. But with that said, we know how historically prolific Michael Vick has been running the ball, and it just adds another dimension that makes those Eagles a great running team. The problem, though, as we've seen all throughout history, is you can be a great running team and a great run defense and not be a great team. It's still, at the end of the day, as much as we like to watch great running backs and great runs, it's still a passes league. And if you don't pass well on offense and stop the pass on defense, it doesn't matter how well you run the football. Case in point, the greatest rushing team of all time were the 1963 Browns. They averaged as a team like 5.8, 5.9 yards per attempt. Jim Brown, I think, averaged 6.4 yards per attempt that season. and that team didn't even sniff the postseason. So it's still, at the end of the day, it's a passes league, and you have to pass well to win.